Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Wabarakatuh.
Uhayyikum tahiyatan islamiyatan, tahiyatan mubarakatan, tahiyatan min indillah, ahsanu tahiyati tahiyatan min fadli rabbi. Innal hamdalillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh wa na'udzu billahi min syururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. May yahdihillahu fala mudhillalah wa may yudhlil fala hadiyalah. Asyhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la syarikalah wa asyhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. First, let's thank to Allah who has given us mercies and blessings. Salawat and salam to our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who has brought us from the darkness into the brightness. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are delighted welcome to the Indonesian Association for Research on English Language Teaching in Islamic Institution. It's a great honor for me to serve as your master of ceremony today. Thank you for joining this event, where we gather to share insight, exchange ideas, and strengthen our contribution to development of language teaching, especially in Islamic educational context. We also would like to express our sincere appreciation to our sponsors and collaboration partners who have supported the IARELTI International Conference. Our journal sponsors includes GEFL from EIN Palangkaraya, Registered Journal by UIN Salatiga, Journal Pedagogy by UIN Jurai Siwalampung, and At-Ta'dib Journal. Our institutional and professional partners, 26 logistic and various academic departments, research center in Islamic institutions, we deeply value to the contribution of all our supporters. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to read today's agenda. The first agenda is opening. The second agenda is reciting the Holy Quran. The third agenda is welcoming remarks. The fourth agenda is plenary session. And the fifth, break time. The sixth session is parallel session. And the last is the closing. To make the best use of our time, let us proceed to the first agenda, the opening session, by reciting Quran together. Ala hadiniyah wa kuliniyatin sholihah. Al-Fatihah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah. Ar-Rahman.
Amin, ya Rabbal Alamin. The IARELTI conference hereby officially opened. For a brief moment, we are going to the second agenda, reciting the Holy Quran by Zainatin Fuzana. As a student of the English department at UIN Jurai Siwalampung, Zainatin Fuzana, the time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
A'udzu billahi minasy syaithanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث صدق الله العظيم. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
Waalaikumsalam
wabarakatuh.
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Zainan Fuzana, for the beautiful recitation of Holy Quran. For a brief moment, we would like to invite you to rise and sing Indonesian national anthem. May all we rise. Thank you. You may be seated now. The next agenda, to officially begin our conference, we would like to invite Dr. Hanung Trioko as the President of IARELTI to deliver his welcoming speech. Dr. Hanung Trioko, the time is yours.
Thank you, Mbak Ilda, Master of Ceremony. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Distinguished speakers, respected colleagues, esteemed guests from Indonesia and around the world, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. On behalf of the Indonesian Association for Research on English Language Teaching Institution, or IRLT, it is my great honor and sincere pleasure to welcome you all to the first IARELTI International Conference hosted online by UIN Salatiga on the 10th and 11th December 2025. Today marks a very important milestone for our association. This conference is the first international gathering under the IRLT umbrella, and it symbolizes our shared commitment to advancing research, strengthening collaboration, and elevating the quality of English language teaching across Indonesian institutions, especially within Islamic higher education context. Allow me to take a moment to express our deep gratitude and appreciation to RELO, the Regional English Language Office of the U.S. Embassy in Jakarta. RELO Jakarta has played a pivotal role as the initiator of this professional group, encouraging us to build a platform where educators, researchers, and institutions can collectively grow. Without their continued support, guidance, and belief in the vision of IRLT, we would not be celebrating this inaugural international conference today. Thank you, Relo Jakarta, for your trust, advocacy, and partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, the establishment of IRLT reflects a realization, one that is shared across many Islamic institutions in Indonesia, that English language education is no longer an optional enrichment, but a strategic and essential component of modern Islamic education. English serves not only as a global communication tool, but also as a bridge for academic exchange, intercultural understanding, and the dissemination of knowledge across borders. Through this conference, we hope to highlight the unique contribution, challenges, and innovation emerging from English language teaching in Islamic institutions in Indonesia. We believe that the practices, pedagogies, and insights from this institution have tremendous value, not only for the development of ERT in our country, but also for how English can harmoniously coexist with local wisdom, Islamic values, and diverse cultural identities. It is our expectation that the scholarly discussion, presentation, and dialogues over the next 2 days will inspire a deeper understanding of how English can become an integral part of educational system at Islamic institution, and even further, how English proficiency can become an inseparable element of the identities of Muslim communities in Indonesia. We envision a future where Muslim students, scholars, and educators embrace global engagement through English while firmly rooted in their cultural and religious values. This conference gathered participants from various universities, pesantren-based institution, international organization, and research network. Your presence reflects a shared commitment to building a more interconnected, research-driven, and forward-thinking ELT ecosystem in Indonesia. I hope that each of you enjoys fruitful session, form new collaboration, and gains ideas that will enhance your teaching and research practice. To Pasca Sarjana Uin Salatiga, our generous host, thank you for your dedication and hard work to make this conference possible. Thanks also to Prof. Rahma and all organizing committee for this conference. Your commitment ensure that this first IARELTI International Conference stands as a model for future events. I proudly announce that the next year international conference will be held in UIN Juraisiwo Metro Lampung. We welcome you there next year, yeah? In closing, I pray that the conference bring meaningful contribution to ELT scholarship, strengthen our professional network, and inspire us to continue striving for excellence in service to our students, our institution, and our communities. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you for your continued support for IRLT. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Mr. Hanu, as the president of ERLT, whose dedication has made this event possible. Thank you very much, Mr. Hanu. Okay, we are now going to listen to the welcome speech delivered by the head committee of ERLT, Professor Rahma Fitriani. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Rahma Fitriani.
Thank you.
Prof. Rahma, are you
Assalamualaikum.
here?
Yes.
Okay.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Distinguished invited speakers, esteemed guests, and participants, good morning. On behalf of the first IRLT Conference Committee, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to this year's conference. We are honored to have such an exceptional group of invited speakers whose expertise, insight, and contributions continue to shape and advance our field. To our invited speakers, Professor Ian Buchanan of the University of Wollongong, Australia, Dr. Tabitha Kidwell of American University, United States of America, Dr. Nurul Huda binti Hamzah of University of Malaya, Malaysia, Louis Scott Conley of World Learning, United States of America, Professor Nurul Askia of UIN Sarif Hidayatullah Jakarta, and Professor Dedi Irwansah of UIN Jurai Siwo Lampung. Thank you for graciously accepting our invitation and for contributing your expertise to this event. Your insight, scholarship, and experience greatly enrich our program and elevate the quality of our discussions. I would also like to extend our sincere appreciation to our sponsors. Your generous support and kind cooperation have been instrumental in making this conference possible. We deeply value your commitment to advancing knowledge, collaboration, and innovation. And my sincere thanks to all committee for your hard work to make this conference possible. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to share a brief report regarding this year's participation. We are pleased to announce that we have 210 presenters delivering their work across our various sections and a total of 80 participants registered for this conference. This strong turnout reflects the growing interest, relevance, and collective enthusiasm for our shared field. With the support of our speakers, sponsors, presenters, and participants, we believe this conference will be an inspiring, productive, and memorable experience for all. Thank you and once again, welcome. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Prof. Rahma Fitriani. We are now going to listen to the welcome speech given by Kevin McCaughey. Mr. Kevin, we are happy to have you with us today. Thank you for joining for this conference, and we hope you are doing well. It's an honor to welcome you.
Thank you so much.
Time is
Selamat
yours.
pagi. My name is Kevin McCoy from the Regional English Language Office at the U.S. Embassy here in Jakarta. So, distinguished guests, honored colleagues, participants, it's a great privilege to join you today for this first international conference of the Indonesian Association for Research on English Language Teaching in Islamic Institutions. I see that we have 100 people here online at once. It's fantastic. Heartfelt congratulations to all of you on the establishment of this new association, dedicating to advancing research on English language teaching and learning in Indonesia's Islamic institutions. I would love to express appreciation for the teachers of RELO's English language teacher training program, whose vision and dedication helped make IARELTI a reality. We're deeply grateful to the Ministry of Religious Affairs as well for its steadfast support from the beginning, especially to Director General of Islamic Education, Professor Dr. Amian Soitino. Your partnership has been essential in this initiative. Also, sincere thanks to Lois Scott Conley, the Senior Educator Advisor at World Learning, whose training empowered the master trainers and teachers, and to Dr. Donald Freeman and his team, whose guidance has been invaluable in supporting your research efforts. A manifestation I have right here, which this is a very beautiful book. All right. As IARELTI embarks on this journey, we look forward to seeing your continued research and collaboration and the next conference next year. Your work plays a vital role in supporting English teachers in Islamic higher education institutions, madrasas, pasantrens, and in strengthening the quality of English language education across Indonesia. So, last, I'd like to thank Dr. Hanung Tuyoko, the president of the association and the director of UIN Salatiga Postgraduate Studies Programs. Professor Dr. Phil Wadyanto for organizing and hosting this conference. And congratulations to all of you who are here.
Recording in progress.
Because it's testimony to your dedication and a bright future for IARELTI. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kevin, for the welcoming speech. Okay, the next greeting will be delivered by Professor Dr. Phil Asfa Widianto as the Director of Postgraduate UIN Salatiga. Prof. Asfa, time is yours.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everybody. Many thanks for inviting us to this prestigious conference. I think it is a timely topic of conference pertaining to identity, integrity, innovation in English language teaching. And this is the first conference which is held by IARELTI, Indonesian Association for Research Language Teaching in Islamic Institution. The president is our brother, Pak Hanung. And here I see some also speaker, some also convener, for example, Prof. Teti, Siti, Prof. Aski is my, and also Tapita maybe is also there. And I think as the first conference in which is held by IRLT, it will be a good start to uh, hold such conference, which is having impact on language teaching, research on language teaching in Indonesia. And the topic which is highlighted in this conference also interesting, also timely, actual, namely that is identity, integrity, and innovation in English language teaching. Many thanks for this great initiative, Pak Hanung, our faculty member, our senior faculty member, even senior than me. He is more senior than me. Our graduate school is highly supportive to initiative, and we would like that Pak Hanung and other scholar, other faculty member, other lecturer who are involved in this association will advance more program, and also conference, and also publication pertaining to English language teaching. And just such introduction pertaining to why this topic is important regarding identity, integrity, and innovation in English language teaching. And I would like to highlight from the colonial perspective a little bit maybe. And my first statement is regarding the multicultural language or multi-language, namely that, for example, Ludwig Wittgenstein, Austrian philosopher, said that die Grenzen meiner Sprache sind die Grenzen meiner Welt, which is translated into English as the limit of my language are the limit of my world. And it is actually underlined that if that language are many, and it is a window to learn other culture, and also other tradition. And it is also translated into Arabic as Dunyan al-wasi'ah ala kudratina ala lughah al-wasi'ah. So that language is not merely about concerning about the grammar of language actually, but it is also related to grammar of thought, because the structure of language is related to structure of thought. And in this sense, it is also in line with the visions of our master program of English language teaching of Winu Salatiga, which in which Pak Hanung is part of this department. And the visions of English language teaching, language teacher education, TPI, in our university is intercultural language teaching, which comprise, for example, developing intercultural awareness, teaching language and culture together, and also promoting intercultural communication skill. So this related actually with the topic and identity in English language, especially if we consider this, for example, in social research, because this is from a perspective that identity is not fixed, but rather socially constructed, and that society is working via shared symbol, for example, language, the colonial perspective, identity that learner, teachers, and also research faculty members and others do not claim a differ of English. Instead, they bring rich cultural, linguistic, and historical identities that should not be erased by English teaching. So English, learning English is not does not necessarily mean that it is a uniformity of in expressing English, either it is in writing, in reading, or also in speaking. And also from decolonial perspective, that it also challenged the idea that native speaker identity is superior. So English here is perceived as a shared legacy, not belong to the Western world, but also shared by the people from developing countries such as Indonesia, Southeast Asia, and others. So the second is that this teaching and also this research is also highly appreciated the students' home languages and cultural language. So they value this home language and cultural language as asset. I think it is just a short introduction, and I think integrity and also innovation is will be discussed later by our speaker. And innovation is a must in language teaching, especially English language teaching. And innovation does not necessarily mean using technology or new method, but rather we are focusing on rethinking on what and which knowledge is valued in English classroom. So it is related to epistemology or epistemic conciseness. So innovation is a key, but it will be rather perceived in broader perspective, not only concerned with technology, but also in awareness, epistemic consciousness, and other. It is called in Arabic ibtida, ikhtira, or bid'ah, yeah, because it is related to innovation, which is not only in technology but also in systemic thinking and epistemic thinking and other. So I hope that this conference will run smoothly, and I see that as reported by the convener, there are many presenter, 200 ya Pak Hanung ya, 200 presenter.
Yes. Yes, Prof. More
Yeah,
than 200.
more than
300.
It is a big achievement for IARELTI. The first conference is attended by more than 200 presenters. We, as the director of graduate school, highly appreciating this conference and this initiative by IARELTI. And I think it is just short introduction. I hope all of you will have success for this conference, for this first conference, first but successful conference. I think that's all. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah. Thank you, Prof. Asfa.
Okay. Okay.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much for the amazing speaker, Pak Asfa Widianto. Now, we will move to the next agenda of our online conference. But before we begin, as Professor Suyitno hasn't joined us yet, we will move forward to the next agenda. But before that, we will now proceed with the bumper video presentation.
Udah. Hilda? Ya. We're still waiting for Bapak Dirjen, or we can continue, Prof. Hanum?
I think we can continue, Mbak Hilda.
Okay, yes. Please, we can proceed, Mbak Hilda.
Prof. Suyitno has not joined us yet. We will move forward to the next agenda. The next agenda is a plenary session. Now we will move on the next agenda of our online conference. Before we begin, allow me to introduce our moderator for this session. He is the Honorable Dr. Hanung Triyoko as the President and as the moderator of this session. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed to the next session, which will be guided by our moderator. Therefore, I would like to officially hand over the screen and the virtual stage to Mr. Hanung. Mr. Hanung, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Mbak Hilda. All of you may be surprised, but I'm honored to step in as the moderator of this session due to the absence of our planned moderator. Let's move forward with our program. Okay, let me confirm, is Tabitha already here?
I am here. Here I am.
Okay, well, yeah. First of all, join me to give a very big applause to Tabitha Kidwell. Yeah, Tabitha is a polyglot, and I'm very happy to have to know her to know her by in person, yeah, because she speak English, French, Spanish, bahasa Indonesia, Malagasy. Amazing, isn't it? Tabitha Kidwell is a language teacher and teacher educator interested in innovative approaches to language teaching, language teacher education, and the development of intercultural competence. We have write many articles published in Scopus, yeah, Tabitha and I, yeah. She has taught French, Spanish, and English to students ranging from preschoolers to adult and has conducted professional development for language teachers in Indonesia, Malaysia, India, Rwanda, Ethiopia, Tanzania, and the United States. And she also a counterpart of Rilo Fellow. Yeah, I'm her counterpart at UIN Salatiga for 2 years. Dr. Kidwell is a frequent presenter at regional and international textile conference. And in 2026, Tabitha and I will also present it at the textile conference in United States. Yeah, she began her career in language education as a Peace Corps volunteer in Madagascar, and now she's very well known in teaching English in many parts of the world. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to give all the opportunity to Tabitha Kidwell for her presentation. Please, Tabitha.
Okay, thank you kindly, Pak Hanu. Oh. That was very nice opening music. I've never had walkout music like that before. Thank you so kindly, Pak Hanung, and thank you to everyone involved at the conference. Warm greetings to you all from the United States. Actually, truthfully, very chilly greetings. It's very, very cold here right now. I very much miss the tropics, though I imagine it's a little bit rainy in Indonesia these days. But it's truly a profound honor to address the International Annual Research in English Language Teaching in Islamic Institutions Conference in Indonesia, especially with the focus on the critical intersection of identity, integrity, innovations, and English language teaching. So I'd especially like to thank Professor Rahma Fitriani and the organizing committee for this kind invitation. Your work resonates deeply with my research into novice teacher development and culturally sustaining practices in Indonesia. And most deeply, I must give direct and profound thanks to Professor Hanung Triyoko, who is my friend and close collaborator on many projects, as he mentioned, and who was also instrumental in hosting me as an English language fellow through the US Department of State, as well as a visiting researcher at UIN Salatiga. So without Pak Hanung's support, the research I will share with you all today would not have been possible. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. That made all of you disappear. Here we go. Okay. So you might notice that I have a link there. I'll share that in the chat. And that link contains the slides from today's presentation, as well as the PDFs of the articles that I will discuss. So you are welcome to access that there. I'll share it again at the end. So my talk today will focus on identity, integrity, and innovation in English language teacher development. To begin, I'll briefly introduce myself. So I have spent almost 3 years in Indonesia total in Salatiga specifically. And that was through the English Language Fellow Program. So that's sponsored by the Relo of the US Embassy in Jakarta. And I see that the lovely Dian Safitri is in the room today. So Dian, Ibu Dian, thank you for being here. It's always a pleasure just even to see your name. So during my time in Indonesia, I was able to teach at what was then Stein Salatiga and then IAIN Salatiga. I'm so pleased to be able to speak now with many of you with our host Uin Salatiga. I was able to visit many classrooms in Central Java, and I worked with some wonderful colleagues. And I'm glad to see some of them here today. I now live in Annapolis, Maryland, which is on the east coast of the United States. And it's in the area of the United States called the Chesapeake Bay. So we have the beautiful waters of the Chesapeake Bay near us. And the Chesapeake Bay is famous for its blue crab. But interestingly enough, if you go to a restaurant and order crab here, it is very likely that the crab you purchase will not have come from the Chesapeake Bay, but from Indonesia, believe it or not. The blue swimming crab in Indonesia is the same species. So a lot of our crab comes from your home. And I now teach at American University, which is in Washington, D.C., which is not too far from Annapolis, Maryland. So I'd love to hear just a little bit about all of you. I know we have a big group here, so I'll ask everyone to please, if you're on camera, raise your hand. If you're not on camera, get ready to raise your digital hand. So please raise your hand if you like nasi goreng. Okay, I see some hands, of course. I imagine I should see many, many hands. Raise your hands if you like durian. I see some hands still. I love durian. I will proudly raise my hand. It's hard to find it here. Raise your hand if you are a teacher. Of course, many, many teachers here. Raise your hand if you will be a teacher one day. If you are not yet a teacher, but you are preparing to become a teacher. Especially to our novice teachers in the audience. I am so glad that you are here. Okay. Now raise your hand if you teach or if you want to teach in a way that reflects your own identity. Some hands raised in that. I will agree with you. Raise your hand if you approach or if you want to approach your profession with integrity. Some hands for that. Wonderful. And raise your hand if you either implement or want to implement innovative teaching practices. Again, many hands for this. So good news, you're in the right place. I don't have any nasi goreng or durian to share with you, sadly. But I will be sharing some insights related to identity, integrity, and innovative teaching practices. So our objectives, and in these objectives, I hope as many of you, the you I'm imagining is English language teachers in Islamic institutions. So we'll discuss how your multilingual and multicultural repertoires are a benefit, but also a challenge because they introduce identity tensions. We will explore how professional integrity can lead you to opportunities for continued learning and growth. And I'll share some examples of innovative teaching practices. So my focus this morning is on the deep connection between these three concepts as pillars for teacher development. So we'll discuss these three objectives, drawing specifically on research conducted in Central Java. And I hope that the findings will ring true for many of you, no matter your context in Indonesia. I don't think it's limited to the situation in Central Java, though, of course, there are some particularities. So by examining these elements, my hope is that we will be able to refine our approach to English language teaching and professional growth, leading to improved outcomes for English learners in Islamic settings in Indonesia and beyond. So we're going to begin by discussing identity. So the landscape of English language teaching has moved away from the idea of English as a foreign language, which has
sorry to
historically...
interrupt for a while, Tabitha. Well, I forgot to tell you that 5 minutes before your 30 minutes, we're going to have question and answer directly. Yes, and I
Very
will
good.
read question on chat box. So yeah, just remind you that 5 minutes we have question and answer. Okay, thank you, Tabitha. You may
Okay.
continue.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we've moved away from EFL, which has historically prioritized the standard language norms of English dominant nations like the United States or the United Kingdom. And instead, advances in technology and digital collaboration have necessitated and moved towards an English as an international language paradigm. So this model emphasizes users' ability to communicate with diverse global speakers and requires adaptive, flexible skills rather than near native proficiency in one dialect. So Indonesia, oh, excuse me, here we go. A nation that is known for its incredible diversity and its multilingual nature is a really interesting setting to explore this shift. So you all frequently operate in communities where Bahasa Indonesia, English, Arabic, and local languages like Javanese or Sundanese are used regularly. So that means that you are all multilingual and you all have local linguistic resources that can support your ability to teach English as an international language. So the first research study I'll share was published just last year, and it was a study of students and faculty in an English teacher preparation program in Central Java. And Pak Hanung and I found that participants were able to use their Javanese language awareness as a resource to learn about culture. So their multilingualism offered them language awareness, which then contributed to their cultural awareness. And we found it did this in two ways. That language awareness was a clear marker of cultural difference. So participants were very aware, oh, you know, I'm Javanese. I have a unique cultural difference from my friends in Bali or my friends in Sumatra. So they really were able to recognize how language choice signals social context. And they were also able to connect to the sociolinguistic features within Javanese. So they drew on their knowledge of Javanese communication norms. So for example, participants in our study often drew on their awareness of Javanese speech levels. So Ngoko, Madyo, Kramya, that had helped participants understand how culture can impact linguistic practice. And those levels provided a resource for understanding more abstract concepts like power distance and social status. And they also referenced the indirect nature of Javanese communication. So they referenced the lip service or the use of indirectness and passive voice and softening particles like mbo and ya that show respect and maintain harmony. They saw that as an important element of Javanese identity and helped them identify broader cultural differences. So interestingly, this study showed that local linguistic identity is not a barrier to global communication, but is actually an intellectual resource that helps people develop cultural awareness. And that resource is crucial for teaching English as an international language, which requires people to be able to understand diverse sociolinguistic contexts. So really that local linguistic knowledge can strengthen teachers' ability to teach English as an international language. And that's a distinct competence for multilingual individuals. But then the necessity of adopting an EIL paradigm can often create a tension in the professional identity of novice EFL teachers. And in another study that was published in Language and Intercultural Communication in 2021, I found that you could divide English teachers in Indonesia into two groups, protectors and preparers. So this study was a multiple case study of 14 novice EFL teachers. And it revealed two distinct belief systems that govern teachers' approaches to teaching culture. And these were not a spectrum, it was really two distinct perspectives. The first perspective was that of protectors. And these teachers saw culture as a heritage to be preserved. So their goal was to protect students from unfamiliar cultures and to protect their Indonesian and Javanese culture. So one participant said this. They said, culture is a heritage. So we as a new generation should keep this culture in our beliefs so that the culture will not disappear. And I think that is a very fair perspective. So those protectors associated culture with the need to preserve local traditions and sometimes expressed concern that new cultures might merge with their traditional cultures. And for this reason, they often prioritized linguistic objectives over cultural ones. Preparers were rather different. So preparers, this group of teacher, saw culture as a lens for understanding, and their goal was to prepare students for encounters with unfamiliar cultures. So a different participant said, for me, culture is what makes people so unique, and that uniqueness has to be appreciated by others. So preparers saw culture as something that underlines a society's behavior and communication. And they focused on preparing students for encounters with people unlike themselves. They viewed learning about other cultures as a means of fostering mutual respect and tolerance. And the distinguishing factor between these two groups seemed to be intercultural experiences. So the protectors, their shared profile was that they were all from rural areas. They all commuted to the university, and then they returned to teach in their home communities. Their primary learning source that they identified was coursework. And one participant said, I only have a little knowledge about culture. So these participants had mostly stayed in their home communities, hadn't really ventured out of their communities that they grew up in very much. And so their perspective was that they needed to protect that culture that they had grown up with. And they were concerned that exposure to new cultures could be threatening to that culture. Preparers, on the other hand, were quite active on campus during their undergraduate years. They taught in new communities, different from the ones they had grown up in, and they engaged in extracurricular activities on campus. So they identified learning from culture from having earned master's degrees, either at regional institutions or international institutions, through international travel and exchanges, through moving from other regions, like even just from Jakarta to Central Java, and through homestay programs with foreigners living in the Central Java area. So one of those participants said this, acquainting with new people automatically make me understand the way my new friends think. It was the moment I learned culture. So the preparers had been exposed to other cultures, and they had come to learn that those cultures and their home cultures could coexist. It wasn't that there was a risk of losing their home culture if they learned about other cultures, but rather the more cultures they learned about, the more appreciation they would have for the world around them. And so they were interested in sharing that with their students. And they were interested in helping their students also develop this viewpoint that culture could be something that you need not fear, but you can be curious about. And that learning about other cultures can broaden your understanding of the world. Okay, so now I'd like to move on to integrity. To sustain this balance between cultural protection and global preparation, teachers need to embody professional integrity. And you can do so through having a commitment to continued learning and embracing innovation in your pedagogy. So professional integrity for English language teachers requires a sustained commitment to continuous professional learning. And that commitment is especially vital considering the importance of intercultural experiences for teachers to be able to teach interculturally. So in that study from 2021, there were several opportunities for professional development embedded within the study. Conferences were not one, but I added that here because we are all at a conference right now. This is also an opportunity for professional development and for learning from colleagues. So I applaud you. You all are already engaging in your own continued professional learning. Conferences are a really important source of that. But these other actions can also be a source of continued professional learning, and they were part of that study that I referenced. So during that study, I observed those 14 teachers at least 5 or 6 times over the course of 6 months. I observed them in their teaching contexts in their schools, and then afterwards we met to discuss their lesson. I asked questions, I offered them feedback, and we had professional conversations about their teaching experiences. So that was a form of mentoring. They could also ask questions and get insight, and they were able to learn from someone else. Mentoring is something that's very powerful. If you can find a professional mentor, that is a great source of learning. Professional learning communities like the one that you all are participating in today are also a powerful form of professional development. And in that study, I invited the 14 participants to meet monthly for a professional development and discussion session. And so over the course of 8 months, they were able to learn from each other and share ideas and share instructional strategies, which of course then offered them opportunities for collaboration. Anytime you collaborate with a colleague to teach a class, to develop a class, to plan a conference, to work together to teach the same group of students, that's an opportunity for professional learning as you share your expertise with each other. So, I'm curious to hear from all of you. Which of these 5 options for professional development have had the biggest impact on you? Select one, or perhaps share another form of professional development that has had a big impact on you. If you're able to access the chat and type in the chat, I'll invite you to please share there just one, or I guess 3 words if it's professional learning community. Just share one word or phrase that explains the forms of PD that have had a big impact on you.
Okay, please share your thought on this. Tabitha, invite us to share. Please raise your hand if you want to talk directly, or if you want to write it on chat box, please.
It can be as simple as just one word or phrase.
Yeah.
I would just love to hear a few examples of what have been influential experiences. Okay, one person has said conferences. Wayu Ningsi, if you'd like to go ahead and unmute, you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. May I, Pa Anu?
Yes, please.
All right.
Ningsi.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'd like to ask about my experience, my personal experience, actually, Tabitha. Usually, when we try to maintain our local culture, sometimes it often clashes with international culture. For example, when we greet people from foreigners, for example, for those who are native speakers, sometimes we use our local greeting way. In Indonesia, sometimes we greet people by saying, kamu ngapain di sini? So what are you doing here, right? So it happens a lot in our daily lives, and when we teach our students to be aware of that, it's not a polite way to greet people from um, other countries. Sometimes they still repeat that kind of the act when they meet bule, or when they meet the native speakers, because that is our local culture. So would you please give or share us maybe some of the tips that how can we teachers easily raise our multicultural awareness to our students who rarely use the language to the native speakers in this context? Thank you.
Yeah, let me answer that just briefly and then get back to the chat. So I think one important thing here is that a cultural encounter goes two ways. So if those bules are in Indonesia, that is also a chance for them to learn about Indonesian culture. So your students don't need to always be adapting to bule culture as if actually as if there were any one bule culture. You know, they don't need to be always adapting to international cultures. They can use their own local culture, but perhaps it'll be an opportunity for them to see that that seems to be impolite to the people they're speaking to.
Yeah.
Or the people they're speaking
Yeah.
to might find it very charming if the child comes and says that to them. So I think that it's okay to retain the own local culture. But I think the important thing here is that students, though they're being exposed to international cultures, they're not losing their home culture. They're retaining their home culture. But hopefully through exposure to other cultures, they will expand their worldview to understand that there are different ways that people exist in the world and that that's okay, that those people are not wrong or misguided. They just have had a different cultural experience. So thank you for the question. I'd like to look at the chat real quick. So it seems that people have had experiences through collaboration, PLCs, mentoring, PLCs, collaboration and observation. A lot of people saying PLCs. We have a question for later, a couple of questions for later. So a lot of people saying they've learned through observations and through PLCs, professional learning communities. And I am so glad to see that. And I encourage you to continue engaging in these professional learning opportunities. Now, lastly, considering innovation, I'd like to share some strategies that Pat Hanung and I have experimented with to innovate in our teaching practice. So engaging in that professional learning through conferences and collaboration and PLCs can help you implement more innovative teaching strategies that can challenge traditional cultural and linguistic hierarchies. So the first was to use authentic World English as materials. So innovation in the classroom starts by challenging the notion that English is owned by native speakers. We have to move beyond that idea and expose students to language norms from diverse settings around the world, not only the standardized language norms of English dominant nations. So my collaboration with Pat Hanung demonstrated that podcasts featuring diverse world English speakers can be a rich and convenient source of authentic listening materials. And that approach is very consistent with the EIL paradigm. So if you don't know about podcasts, they are free audio recordings that are automatically delivered to users' devices. They're a very useful source of linguistic input. They're quite easy to find online through podcast apps like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. My preferred app is Pocket Casts. There are many language learning podcasts available that are focused specifically on teaching and learning English, and that's very helpful for beginner learners. But for intermediate and advanced learners, there are also authentic podcasts. So podcasts that are developed for people who are just interested in hearing the language. You have some links there that you can access through the slides. But those authentic podcasts feature diverse global voices, and that can be very helpful and interesting. So student responded quite positively to podcasts. They believed that they had improved their language skills in terms of their vocabulary and their exposure to good pronunciation. They appreciated hearing the diverse voices. So one student said, for me personally, listening to speakers who use English as their additional language is more easier than native speakers because we are both learning. So we have some similarities in pronunciation or use general words. And they also had a preference for familiar topics. So they found it easier to listen to highly proficient speakers who use English as an additional language. But they were really interested when the podcast involved content related to themes familiar to them. So using episodes on observing Ramadan, or an episode about a Muslim chaplain in Canada, or one featuring a journalist in Indonesia was very successful. These two articles are very accessible and very short, so they might be especially interesting. They're quite clear. They're intended for a practitioner, a teacher audience. And then the last innovative practice that we experimented with was implementing digital exchange programs. So intercultural experience is fundamental to developing a preparer identity and developing professional integrity. So teachers who are unlikely to have transnational experiences on their own could be encouraged and assisted to do so through digital connections. So in our program in fall of 2024, we paired students in first-year classes at American University and at UIN Salatiga to collaborate and share digital stories. And then just this fall, we've completed some discussion sessions that brought together students from American University, UIN Salatiga, and also students from the College of Teacher Education in Vienna. And they participated in Zoom discussion sessions on global English use, multilingualism in education, multilingualism in religion, and multilingualism in literature. So digital exchanges like these provide exposure to diverse perspectives and help students reflect on their own cultural identity. So with that, we've now explored the relationship between teacher identity in a multilingual Islamic context, the necessity of professional integrity rooted in continuous learning, and the power of pedagogical innovation to bridge cultural gaps. So I will encourage you to embrace the complexity of having a multilingual intercultural identity. Seek out opportunities for continued growth, especially intercultural experiences. And be open to new ideas and willing to keep experimenting if they don't work at first. And actually, when they don't work at first. Because the first time you try a new idea, it often can be quite difficult. But if you continue to experiment and improve, it is possible to implement even the most challenging of activities. So by focusing on integrity, identity, and innovation, we can ensure that students and teachers in Islamic settings across Indonesia and beyond are prepared to emerge as the next generation of global English users. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this very insightful presentation, Tabitha Kidwell. Now it's time for question and answer. Yeah, I will read one question from Mas Asdak Al Arif. How might teacher training program help bridge the gap between these two belief systems, protectors and preparers, by showing them how translanguaging can both preserve local identity and prepare students for global understanding? So, yeah, Astak talk about translanguaging in this case, please.
Yeah, so I think teacher training programs need to offer students intercultural experiences, even if that's a digital experience. But students need to come in contact with people different from themselves. And I think translanguaging comes into that because if we approach those exchanges with a translanguaging paradigm, we can accept that students won't speak perfect English all the time. They might rely on their first language, but they'll use the resources that they have and maybe collaborate together to communicate effectively, even if it's not only in English and even if it's not in perfect English. So a translanguaging approach accepts that students at varying levels of proficiency are still speaking English, even if it's not perfect. And that really is an essential understanding to come into any intercultural exchange to make it more successful. So just shifting your mindset to accept a translanguaging pedagogy and a translanguaging approach, and accepting that people have varying levels of expertise in all their languages is a key element of a successful intercultural exchange.
Okay, hopefully that answer your question, Mas Asdak. Now the second question is from Pak Abdul Shahid. How can teacher in Islamic and multilingual context protect student local identities while preparing them to engage confidently with word Englishes? That's the question.
It's a really important question. And I want to be really clear. I'm not saying that the protectors are wrong. It's really important to protect local cultures. At the same time, the preparers weren't giving up on their local cultures. They were just adding to them. So I think the idea that you need to protect local cultures is important. We do need to take care of those local cultures. But learning a new culture won't necessarily replace the local culture. We have space to learn about multiple cultures. And so I think it's important to teach students that they can share their culture with others during these intercultural exchanges. And so an intercultural exchange is not only you learning about the new culture, it's also about you sharing your culture with them. And so the local culture, your sort of culture of your heart is really essential. That's who you are, and that's your identity that you're bringing to your intercultural exchange. So it really is essential to keep a balance.
Okay, thank you. That's the answer, Pak Abdul Said. Okay, we were waiting for another question, one more question. But I'd like to read comment from Fahriza Kirani. My research paper also analysis about using podcast for autonomous learning in listening context. Yeah, Mbak Kirani, you can find Tabitha and I often wrote article published in Index Scopus Index Journal. If you cannot find it online, you can contact me and I will share with you the article about the podcast Mbak Kirani.
And you can also contact me. I've just shared my email.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear about your
Tabitha just
research as
share
well.
her email on chatbook. Yeah. Okay.
And I'll share again the link to the folder that has those articles in it. If you'd like to learn more about any of the research I shared tonight, you can talk to Pat Hanung about it, or you can email me,
Yeah,
or you can find the articles in
that's
that
very
folder.
generous of you, Tabitha. You have just shared the folder to all resourceful material for ELT in Indonesian context. Yeah, thank you very much. Well, Tabitha, I know that maybe it's too late for you to wait for another speaker, so I would like to invite the head of the organizing committee, Prof. Rahma, to give you the certificate for presenting today. Please, Prof. Rahma, time is yours.
Okay, thank you. On behalf of the first IRLT conference committee, Dr. Tabitha Wittke Kidwell, I extend our deepest gratitude for coming and welcoming our invitation. Thank you very much for your insightful presentation on identity and integrity and also innovation in particularly English language teaching professional development. And this is a token of our appreciation as a symbol, and there's no words I can use to express our gratitude. Thank you one more time, and we hope to work in the future with you. Thank you very much.
I hope so as well. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, applause for Tabitha.
Thank you, everyone, again for inviting me. It was really a pleasure to speak with you all.
Okay, now
Thank you.
hopefully, I really hope that we can still work again for this conference next year, yeah, Tabitha? Yeah, okay. I give the time back to moderator. Sorry, to master of ceremony. Mbak Hilda, please. Okay, Mbak Hilda.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hanung. And thank you very much for Tabitha Kidwell, PhD. And the next agenda is, we are also privileged to be joined by our keynote speaker, Tabitha Kidwell, and we are going to the next keynote speaker, Professor Siti Nurul Askia, PhD. Are you here?
Okay. Now, join me to give very big applause to our second speaker for this plenary season. Ibu Profesor Siti Nurul Askia, PhD ya. Ibu Siti Nurul Askia is a professor at the Department of English Education, the Faculty of Educational Science, UIN Syarif Hidayatullah. She is currently serving as the Dean of the Faculty of Educational Science. And she was previously the head of the Center of Language Development. She was my colleague when we were at UPB, UPTPB. Yeah. She completed her bachelor degree in English education from the State University of Malang. And then she continued her master degree at the University of York, United Kingdom. Wow. And subsequently completed her doctoral degree at the University of Groningen. Wow, excellent. Netherlands, yeah. Her research interests include academic writing, English education, teacher effectiveness research, and professional development program for the teachers. Such a long experience in training and teaching of English. Okay, without further ado, I would like to invite our colleague, one of the founding parents of IRLT as well, Professor Dr. Nurul Askia. Time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Hanung, for the warm and nice introductions of me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good morning, everyone.
Waalaikumsalam.
It is an honor and a privilege for me to be the speaker of this esteemed first international conference of IARELTI, the newest associations focusing on the research on English teaching in madrasah or Islamic institutions in Indonesia. So as you can see from the title of my presentations, I'm going to talk about a model for teacher professional development in Indonesia, which was based on research which we did on a program of English language teacher training sponsored by RILO and conducted in collaborations with the Indonesian Ministry of Religious Affairs and also World Learning, as also you can see from the screen here. I'm so happy to share the results of this research because I hope this can be a model for teacher professional development, especially in the context of our country. So I'm going to divide my presentations into the context or the background, the call for teacher professional development, especially in the context of English, and then also the implementations of ELTT, the research questions, and of course the methods, and also the findings and takeaways which we can learn from the implementations of this ELTT program. So let me begin with the conditions of teachers in Indonesia, including English teachers. So as you can see from the slide here, out of 3.9 million teachers nationwide in Indonesia, significant portions lack the required qualifications for effective teaching. Well, I took the data from the Indonesian news outlet report, from which we know here 25% of teachers still did not meet academic qualifications requirements, including English teachers, especially English teachers in madrasah, which was the focus of this study. Also, more than 50% of teachers in Indonesia still do not yet have the professional certificate, which is the nationwide program to improve as a way to improve teachers, which means that every teacher should actually have this certificate to enable them to teach, and also as a mark for their qualifications, and also to have additional allowance, which is expected then to improve their motivations to teach, and of course finally to have a positive impact on students' learning outcome. The next slide, please. Okay, so now if we take a look at the teachers in madrasah, as we have known that in Indonesia we have two types of let's call it as educational system. So the general schools under, I'm sorry to still use the old terms of Kemendikbudrismen, the Indonesian Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, the new name. So they supervise what we consider as general school, and we also have the Ministry of Religious Affairs, which supervise madrasah and other Islamic schools. Well, it's clearly stated in this in the slides, and I think it's also familiar with us that schools under the Ministry of Education, let's call it in a short way as the Ministry of Education, they have more funding and also more development opportunities. I think it's also quite well known as well to hear the complaint of teachers in madrasah. They lack the opportunities to attend professional development. And thanks to RELO, which initiates the ELTT program, because at the beginning, the ELTT was solely for the madrasah teachers. Although right now we know that RELO also expand the beneficiaries of the program. A lot of madrasah are private, and that's why then they do, many of them of course then do not receive sufficient financial allowance from the government, so they take only money from society, and not all of them, and many of them are quite poor. They do not have a lot of sources to facilitate better and quality teaching and learning processes. Also, in terms of the qualification gaps, for the English teachers, many English teachers still, especially in rural areas, still they do not have degrees from English education departments. So, for instance, they graduated from pesantren like Gontor, for instance. They did learn English at the pesantren, and then are assigned to be English teachers because they were considered to have sufficient training from the pesantren. Even in the areas of close to Jakarta, I still observed English teachers who do not have English qualifications. Next slide, please. So that's why then again, as I said earlier, we thank to RELO, which initiated this ELTT program, targeted interventions because of the critical need of teacher professional development for English teachers in madrasah. So this program was launched in 2022 with Mbak Dian. Thank you very much, Mbak Dian, to also invite me to discuss the design of the program from the very beginning after the COVID-19 pandemic. And the objective of this program is to improve the quality of English language teaching in madrasah. As you can see also from the right side, so we want to improve teachers' confidence and ability to use English in the classroom, because we have observed a lot of English teachers who deliver the instructions not using English, but using Bahasa Indonesia. And I believe this is also one of the reasons of the failure for the teaching of English in Indonesian context in general, because when teachers rarely speak the target language, then of course the students won't have sufficient input from the teaching and learning process. Also with this training, with this ELTT training, we want to deepen the understanding of teachers to deliver the instructions using student-centered learning methodologies. And also through this program, we want to help them to expand their network and to develop learning communities so they can share ideas and challenges and solutions together. Okay, so this program, as I said to you earlier, was initiated by RELO, but then conducted in collaborations with World Learning, which provided us with a great master trainer, a grandmaster trainer, yeah, because then at the from MORA, from Islamic universities in Indonesia, we have master, what we call as master trainer. Okay, next slide, please. So this ELTT program, the structure is that this training was a cascade model of training. So we had grandmaster trainers from World Learning, and then 12 of us coming from different Islamic institutions in Indonesia, from 12 UIN, Universitas Islam Negeri. We were 12 master trainers, and then each of us was assigned to appoint 5 trainers who were junior lecturers in each of our university. So in total, at the beginning, we had 36 lecturers or trainers. And then each of the trainer was also assigned to invite 5 teachers from our surrounding area. So in total, at the beginning, we had 280 teachers, English teachers from madrasah and pesantren. Next, please. So we call this as a blended and flexible approach to help teachers to improve their English competence and also their teaching instructions. It's blended format because we combined both online and also in-person meetings. So we were honored, yeah, to get the access from of the resources from the National Geographic Learning. The teachers were provided with learning with LMS, with applications. And in this way, of course, then teachers could manage their own time and with their own pace as well to finish all the courses. It's also relevant content. So the materials were divided into 2 types of content. The first one is English for Teaching, or EFT, which consists of practical language skills for classroom instructions, and also professional knowledge, which covers modern pedagogical techniques. So in this way, in this kind of models, we also promote teacher agency, because again, teachers can manage their own time in their and also according to their pace in completing and finishing all the courses. Yeah. we observe that some teachers faced the challenge with technology, but the trainers were really excellent in helping the teachers to fix technicalities. And finally, um, I think 100% they all completed the courses with different time management pace and also scores as well. Next, please. Can I have the next? Okay. So in this research, we want to look at the impact of the program through a detailed case study. So at the beginning, I mentioned there were 280 participants in total throughout Indonesia, but this study was conducted in Jakarta and Banten with only 20 teachers. Not only Jakarta and Banten, but also West Java. So they voluntarily participated in the study. They were invited by the trainers in my hub. So we have each master trainer had a learning hub consists of 5 trainers. You can see the demographic data of the teachers, and in terms of the data collections, we used a pre-programmed questionnaire consisting of 10 self-assessment of teaching capabilities on a scale of 1 until 10. But at the end of the program, so the program lasted for around 3 months. And at the end of the program of the training, we distributed another questionnaire, but we changed the way how teachers should respond to the question. So now we have the yes, no, and answer survey on whether practices had improved because of the training they joined during the program. We also enriched the data from the questionnaire through focus group discussions to explore specific changes in teaching practices. So in this way we were able to gather some evidence of the teaching practices of the participants. Next, please. So this was the results. Well, 100% of teachers considered themselves to improve their teaching practices. And we look in this conference, because we didn't have a lot of time, so we focused on 3 domains. The first one, providing students learning opportunities, because I think we all believe that students learn because they were provided with the learning opportunities. The second one, I want to highlight the teaching of productive skill, and in this case, we point out the writing skills. And the last one, we looked at the impact on the teaching of high order thinking skills, because this is a relevant and crucial skills in the 21st century era. Next, please. So concerning the enhanced techniques for providing learning opportunities, we actually looked at diverse ways that teachers learn to engage students to provide learning opportunities through varieties of teaching techniques. For instance, well, you can see the teacher's voice here. They learn different techniques such as snowball classrooms, but they don't actually take or were provided with the learning opportunities. It's possible students and teachers are in the classroom, but they're doing something else. So in this provisions of learning opportunities, teachers learned essential strategies for creating a supportive learning atmosphere, helping students become more engaged and active learners. Next, please. How much more time do I have, Pak Hanum? Please just let me know if I have to speak faster.
Well, you still have 10 minutes, Ibu
10
Professor
minutes.
Nurul.
Oh, okay. Okay then. The second one concerning increased confidence and skill in teaching writing. I think we all are aware that teaching writing is not easy, because in addition to the fact that writing is somehow a subjective type of skills, what I mean by subjective here, it is quite difficult for teachers to actually provide feedback. But it could be easy for the teachers to deliver the instructions, but when they have to provide the feedback, it's not that easy, because it's not like multiple choice questions, which could be easily corrected. But with productive skills, there are several aspects which teachers have to consider in order to provide not only the instructions, but also the feedback as well. So here you can see from the graph, this is the initial self assessment. We know that well, you can see here in the pulse program, over 70% of the participants reported that the training had improved their skills in teaching writing. For instance, they learned new pre-writing strategies and ways to structure the writing process for students. For instance, the teachers mentioned that they learn how to teach the students on how to generate some ideas before they write, or they use some pictures to help students ideas on what they should write when they have to describe, for instance. So yeah, basically teachers learned more strategies in how they could help and facilitate the students, yeah, to generate written ideas. And the next, please. So the third one is teaching high order thinking skills. I think this is the area where a lot of Indonesian students still lack of. If you refer to the results of PISA, for instance, yeah, I think Indonesian students were ranked like 4, 5, 6 from the bottom. We have been far behind our neighboring countries, yeah, like Malaysia and moreover Singapore. And one of the weaknesses is because a lot of our students are not equipped with how they can critically look at their surroundings, including in the teaching and learning process. Some of the ways teachers learn on how to introduce and develop students' critical thinking is asking the students to summarize and also to have reflections, which are in line, yeah, with right now in Indonesia, we have in our education right now, we often hear the new paradigm of pembelajaran mendalam, and not one of them, but the last stage in the deep learning is reflections. And I think, yeah, it's a way of how we can develop and introduce critical thinking to our students by building awareness to them of something which they learned from the lesson, and something which they think they need to learn more. So this is a very good skills which teachers also learn from ELTT program.
Okay, Prof. Nurul, when I say
Yes.
10 minutes, including the question and answer. So,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, so I'll just go very quickly, maybe just like 4 minutes. So these are the 4 critical factors which drove the program success. It's relevant. It's also while the blended learning model also provides the opportunities for the trainers and the teachers, yeah, to have to still have the interactions, but also to be able to manage their time. The cascade model also is very suitable for Indonesian context, because we have so many populations, we have so many areas which cannot be accessed only at the national level. And this also provides a true community of practice. Next, please. And well, also because of the post-pandemic era, this is also a good way of developing teachers' professional development, because again, they can still build their competence, but they just do it, at their home in their own convenience. And also addressing inequality in terms of access, especially from rural areas because of the technology. Next, please. I think I nearly come to, so this is the end of my slides. So these are the takeaways and the path forward. I think what I would like to highlight is that future research can build on these foundations by exploring the direct impact on students' learning outcomes, because we only looked at the teaching quality and teaching practices, but we haven't really looked at the students' outcome. And of course, the end goal of this teacher professional development is actually to improve students' outcome, which we need to address. One more point I would like to share is that this ELTT program is also completed with a research design, which makes this program really comprehensive, because it starts from developing teachers, looking at the impact, which could be the insight for future directions of teacher professional development. So thank you very much, Pak Hanum and everyone. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Prof. Nurul Askia, PhD. Well, I should say that's a very comprehensive report of our activities while being master trainer and research. Yeah, thank you. Okay, now it's time for question and answer. If you do have questions, please raise your hand and ask now directly, or you can write on chat box. Well, I don't see any question on chat box, so please, if you have question, ask directly. I give the time for you to speak directly. Well, okay, I have one question here from Bu Asmia. How effective is the cascading approach in developing the teachers' competencies, and whether there has been reassessment if the teachers can sustain the new skills after years of completing the training? Yeah, good question. Come on, Prof. Nurul.
Okay. Yeah, it's a very good question. Yeah, I think this also can be insight for us to do research concerning this topic. Yeah, to be honest, yeah, we haven't looked at, we haven't reassessed teachers' practices after the training. But if you talk about the effectiveness based on the study which we did here in the area of Jakarta, Banten, and West Java, we could say that this training was effective based on teachers' self-report and teachers' explanations during our FGD. They were very sure that they improved their teaching practices a lot. They learned different types of techniques. They also learned different ways of teaching different types of language skills to their students. So in this way, then I'm positive to say that this ELTT program has improved teachers' teaching skills effectively. But of course, yeah, this is a small study of only 20 teachers, while we actually had 280 teachers. We do have the data of teachers' tests. I think, yeah, I also then, use this opportunity to call for the participations of other trainers. Maybe we can work together to look at the impact based on the tasks and other surveys carried out by World Learning, and reassess their teaching practices through a questionnaire or through observations in the future. But thank you very much for the question.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Nurul, and to Bu Siti. I hope that answer your question. Okay, since there's no more question, now I'd like to invite Prof. Teddy as the vice chief of this organizing committee to handle the certificate of presentation for Prof. Siti Nur Askia. Time is yours, Prof. Teddy. Are you there, Prof. Teddy? Okay, maybe and then I'll invite another important person in this organizing committee, Mas Abdul Said. Through Abdul Said, please, you can give the certificate to Prof. Siti Nurul Askia, please. Okay, time is yours, Mas Abdul. Your microphone is off. Halo? Your microphone is still off, Pak Abdul. Halo, Pak Abdul.
Mungkin bisa Prof. Rahmah kembali barangkali Pak.
Yeah,
Sepertinya
okay.
suara.
Prof. Rama, we have technical difficulties with Pak Abdul.
Okay.
I like to invite Prof. Rahma indeed to give the certificate.
Okay. We do expect to see more of the committee members in the next opportunity to provide the certificate to our speakers. And on behalf of the committee, I would like to extend my gratitude to Prof. Siti Nurul Askia, MSc PhD, who is also one of the founding parents of IRLT. Thank you for your for sharing your expertise, your insightful knowledge on this topic. And here is a token of appreciation from the conference committee. Thank you, Prof. Nurul.
Thank you, Prof. Rahma. It's an honor and a pleasure for me to be in these sessions.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Nurul and Prof. Rama. Now I give the time back to Master of Ceremony for the next plenary session speaker.
Thank you very much for Professor Siti Nurul Askia, PhD, for your insightful keynote presentation. We truly appreciate your contribution to today's conference. Now we will move to our final keynote speaker, Professor Ian Buchanan. Are you here?
Hello, Prof. Ian. Okay, join me to give very big applause to Professor Ian Buchanan. Buchanan or Buchanan? Do I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes, Buchanan is correct.
Buchanan, yeah. Okay. Yeah, we already have our respected speaker, Professor Ian Buchanan. Well, let me read first some of some of his biography, bio. Prof. Ian got his PhD from Murdoch University. Yeah, the thesis is entitled "Heterology Towards a Transcendental Empirist Approach to Cultural Studies," and first class honor in English and Comparative Literature, Murdoch University, and part of his uh, work experience is becoming visiting professorship, like in many places, more than 10 places, and one of them in June 2019 at Nelson Mandela University, South Africa, and November 2008 at the Department of English, Sungkyun Kwan University, South Korea, and recently at this time, Prof. Ian is a visiting professor also at UIN Sari Hidayatullah, Jakarta. Isn't that right, Prof. Ian?
Yes, that's correct. I was there a few weeks ago.
Okay. Thank you very much for being here with us. Now, without further ado, I would like to give all the time to you, Prof. Ian, please.
Thank you very much for the introduction and the kind welcome. Apologies, I haven't figured out how to put up the background, so I don't have the background. But when you hear my paper, you realize that that's probably not an accident. I should also clarify that in my introduction, I was described as being at the University of Wollongong in the United States of America. Neither of those two things is correct. I'm not at the University of Wollongong, and I'm not in the United States of America. I am in Wollongong, but just not at the university. All right, so the title of my talk, as you can see there, the ethics of AI and pedagogy. The question I want to ask kind of arises from my time in Jakarta, where I was asked quite a lot about AI and its possible use in pedagogy. And so I wanted to ask the question whether or not there was, in fact, a responsible use of AI in the classroom by students, but also by teachers, I would say. And my answer is that I'm not sure that there is a responsible way to use AI for pedagogy. And in fact, I would probably want to go further than that and say I think that AI does not have a place in the classroom. But I guess the question then is how would you decide the answer to this question for yourself? And I think the answer would depend on how you defined pedagogy. So, in other words, raising the question of whether or not there is a responsible use of AI in pedagogy is also a way of asking the question, well, what is pedagogy? And so another way to ask this question would be to ask yourself, how do you know when pedagogy has happened? Are there reliable signs or indicators that you can point to that says this means pedagogy has happened? Now, of course, this has been studied extensively, and I'm not going to rehearse all that research here. So we can perhaps agree that in language learning, for instance, we can say that pedagogy has happened, that somebody has learned something if they have learned a part of language, for example, how to decline irregular verbs, and then they're able to do it. So pedagogy has happened because they can do something. You have learned English when you actually can read, speak, and comprehend in that language. And one does not have to have mastered English to say one has learned it, but one does have to have a certain level of competency. And again, there are all kinds of tests and measures for this competency. The most well-known and recognized is probably the IELTS. So what I want you to imagine is someone using AI on their phone or their laptop or whatever in order to get a high score on their IELTS. So in other words, instead of just taking the test by themselves, they've allowed AI to fill in the blanks, and therefore they've got a terrific score because they've used Google Translate or whatever. Would this be a true measure of their proficiency in English? And I think the answer to that question would have to be no, right? And if you want to extend this idea, think about a medical doctor using AI to pass all their exams, and they get to the other side of their time at university, and now they're a doctor. They go out into the world, and here they are trying to diagnose somebody, whether or not they've got liver cancer or whatever. And suddenly they're having to use AI to do their diagnosis because they personally do not know the answer to the question because they never really bothered to learn it. Or imagine an engineer who can't tell if a bridge is going to collapse or not collapse because they can't tell or don't know how to double check what the computer tells them they should do, and so on. So when we're talking about learning, we have to think about what it really means for someone to actually know something. And would we like a situation in which them not knowing something would be treated as though they did know something? So now imagine an examination that was carried out and assessed by AI. Could we rely on its results? Could we rely on its capacity to assess whether a human, or even a human using AI, was proficient in English? And again, I don't think so, because real competence, in my view, is measured by a capacity to handle irregularity. So what do I mean by that? Well, let me give you an example. I often find when I'm talking to people whose first language is not English, that I have to guess what they're trying to say. So in other words, my competence in English is measured by my capacity to handle incompetence in my interlocutor. And I don't mean that in any way to be insulting, but very often when you're talking to someone in a language that is not their first language, you find that there is little mistakes that creep in, and you have to kind of mentally correct what they're saying in order to figure out what it is that they're actually trying to get across. So I'm able to make sense of what people say because I can apprehend the variability built into what they say. Now, variability is a concept that Deleuze and Guattari talk about, and it can be measured like this. How much can something vary before it ceases to be recognizable as that thing? And whenever I'm trying to sort of describe or think about this concept, I always suggest that you think about a song that you really like, and then think about all the ways in which that song can be changed. And you do this on Google if you like and find all the different versions of a song. And ask yourself, how much can that song change before you don't recognize it as that song anymore? Now, one of the great things about English as a language is that it has a very high tolerance for variability. Most people who speak English mispronounce words all the time. And if you think about what the different accents really mean, they're also a kind of systematic mispronunciation of all kinds of words. So very, very high tolerance to variability. For example, if you go to Germany and you speak bad German, the people there simply switch to English because they really can't understand your German. Like they can't handle variability in German, so they simply switch to English. Likewise, if you go to France and you speak bad French, they just don't talk to you. They don't try to understand it. They have no conception of variability. There's only sort of one way of doing things. Meanwhile, in English, as I said, everybody, including native speakers, mispronounce things all the time, and the language keeps evolving. And so I think it's really important to understand that English has a very high tolerance for variability. And this is something that's kind of, one of the reasons why English can be taught so widely is because there's not such a high expectation of perfection. Rather, English is taught as a language that you can kind of improvise with, and you need to learn a few basic rules, and then you can improvise. So in some ways, then, the best way to test competency in English is not to ask someone to determine if a language construction is right or wrong, but rather to ask them to determine the meaning of something we know is wrong. So consider, for example, the opening stanza of E. Cummings' famous poem, Anyone Lived in a Pretty How Town. So the opening stanza goes, anyone lived in a pretty how town, with up so floating many bells down, spring, summer, autumn, winter, he sang his didn't, and he danced his did. Now, this poem is often held up as an example of nonsense poetry or absurdist poetry, but it's also generally regarded as a work of genius. Now, if AI wrote this poem, we would think there was something wrong with the program because it was just churning out nonsense. If a student wrote it, we'd mark them down for getting their English muddled. And yet, we can make sense of this poem if we are competent enough, if we can tolerate variability and we can work with it. Now, I've gone off on a slight tangent here, so let me bring it back to my original question, which was how do we know that pedagogy has taken place? How do we determine if someone is competent or not? Now, this question has become, I think, quite urgent and important in a way that nobody really anticipated 10 or 20 years ago. No one thought, what will we do if computers can just write assessments for our students? 20 odd years ago, we were worried about plagiarism, and we've gotten quite used to dealing with plagiarism and developed quite good techniques for spotting when it happens. And since Google reads and indexes the entire internet, if someone copies something from the internet, it can usually be spotted. But AI is quite different. It isn't copying from the internet. It's creating pastiches on a global scale. It's still a version of copying, but it is much harder to spot. And the AI systems that have been created to detect the presence of AI productions have so far been disappointing in their results. And I assume that they will get better, but right now they are not all that effective. And interestingly, they tend to produce very high numbers of false positives. That is, they think more cheating is going on than is actually the case. And it possibly says something about why AI is possible, because so much of what we write and say is structured by the built-in redundancies of our language. In other words, all the things we have to say the way we do because of grammar, because of convention, and so on, means that it's quite easy to copy those things and for it not to be a form of plagiarism because it's part of the rules of how we operate. So, for example, we know we're not supposed to say something like, he danced his did, so we don't. So that would, if that phrase was encountered, it would be encountered as something that was completely irregular. And because we respect the rules like this, our language is highly regular and highly regularized. And for the same reason, we need to break those rules if we want to be creative. But we have to do so in a way that doesn't then collapse into nonsense. It has to be teetering on the edge of nonsense, as it were, but it must still make sense. As Deleuze says, we have to find a way of placing language itself into variation. And this is not something that AI can be programmed to do, at least not yet, because to do so would be to generate nonsense. So if students are using AI, then they're not learning to be creative. They're learning, if they're learning anything at all, and I'm not sure that they are, they're learning to replicate and to mimic, to reproduce patterns and models rather than to generate new creative things for themselves. And as Picasso demonstrated, creativity is a function of technical mastery. He could draw realistic images to rival the greatest of artists, but he chose not to pursue that course. Instead, he sought to push figurative painting as far as it could go before it ceased to be figurative. And again, you couldn't program AI to do that unless you could first of all conceive that art could be pushed in that direction, which is a creative leap, not something that the AI can at this point in time do. So what I'm saying then is that learning has taken place in two situations. First of all, when technical proficiency can be demonstrated, and then secondly, that proficiency is demonstrated via creativity, by a capacity to break the rules, as it were. So why would we want to invite AI into our classrooms? But let's get back to the question, if students are using AI in their assessments, are they learning anything at all? Now, as I said, I think the answer to this question is no. They're not learning anything if AI does the work for them. And we could only test this by assessing the students when they don't have access to AI. And a lot of people are talking about this now, about the idea that we should go back to the old model of exams and, give students pens and papers and lock them in a room with somebody staring over the shoulder to make sure that they're not using the computers to cheat. But I think there are two questions here that are worth serious consideration. Firstly, why would students want to use AI? Surely they cannot be unaware that if AI is doing their assessment for them, that they're not learning anything, that the machine is simply doing it, they're not learning. So if students know they're not learning anything by using AI, then that means they don't see learning as a priority. And I assume, and this would be worth testing, that they are prioritizing good grades over actual learning, which I would say is a structural fault in our education system. Because we have come to think, wrongly in my view, that grades measure learning. But in an era of AI, that is no longer true. Because now grades are simply a measure of AI's capacity to replicate a certain model of thinking and writing. So people are worried that we need to change assessment practices in order to prevent people from cheating. But what I'm trying to suggest is that there is a much bigger problem here, and we need to think about how to address that. And that is that we need to change our assessment practices in such a way as to encourage learning all over again. In other words, we don't want students to prioritize getting good grades. What we want students to prioritize is actually learning. And this will require a major change in how we think about education and how do we go about rewarding competency without reducing it to a grade, i.e., how do we measure competency without measuring it? Of course, there are probably students who aren't aware that by using AI they aren't learning anything. And this is a different kind of a problem and also kind of a worrying situation. These students view learning in terms of their capability to use a machine. They equate their know-how or technical proficiency in getting a machine to do a certain piece of work with the acquisition of knowledge. So in other words, they use their computer to perform an action, and they don't regard the action that the computer performs, whatever the content of that is, as being important. What they think of as important is being able to get the computer or the machine to do that piece of work, right? So it's a kind of meta level abstraction of what learning looks like. And in some ways, it's a kind of existential problem as well, because it stems from a worldview in which everything, i.e., every form of experience, is and should be mediated via a screen. The average sort of teenager now, why would you talk to someone when you could send them a text? Why would you send them a text when you could post something on Insta? Don't talk to someone unless it's a comment on someone's post or Insta and so on. So everything is mediated. And kids now, they follow trends, they collect likes, they post selfies and so on. And in a way, there's no space left for learning. But what is really going on here, and which I'm finding is replicated in classrooms, is that active forms of imagining, thinking, and creating have been replaced by passive forms. And I always think here about Heidegger's famous essay where he talks about sitting in a train station. This is in Germany in the 1920s. Absolutely nothing to do, no TV, no radio, nothing. And he's sitting in a train station and he's completely bored out of his brain. And he realizes that by being bored, he is in fact forcing his brain to work. So in his moment of boredom, his brain is at its most active. It's entertaining. And so what we find then is that this is an active form of imagining and thinking and doing, right? But now nobody would do that, because if you were sitting in a train station and you were bored, you would have a screen. You would be looking at your phone, you'd be looking at a screen out there somewhere else. I'll get to the faith bit in a moment, and so on. And you would not be bored, but you would have switched from an active mode to a passive mode. You would now be receiving stimulation for your entertainment, if you like, rather than using your active imagination. And a question popped up about faith, or rather faith-based education. And I would say this, I mean, ask yourself this: if you have students who are using AI to answer questions relating to theology, rather than reading the Quran and studying it and arriving at their own proper understanding of the text, then it's hard to see how that would be contributing in a meaningful and positive way to a faith-based education. You would have exactly the same displacement of people moving away from an active engagement with a text, and presumably an active engagement with God, to one that was mediated and the machine was doing it for them.
I'm sorry, Prof. Ian, you still have
Yes.
7 minutes, including question and answer session.
Okay, that's fine. I can end there and take questions.
Okay. Now let me read the question from the chat box. One question from Pak Abdul Sahid. Yeah. How can faith-based educational institution use AI in English language teaching ethically and stay true to their core values, especially when AI is developing so quickly? Some also fear that it may one day replace many teaching roles. Okay, that's the question, Prof. Yeah.
Yes, well, as I was answering already, kind of anticipating that question, I would be very concerned about AI becoming part and parcel of any form of faith-based teachings. I think it will diminish the kind of quality of that teaching. But I guess where I was going with this talk, and I hadn't realized that I was talking so slowly, is we need to think a lot about why students are tempted to use AI. And they are tempted to use AI, I think, for two reasons. One, because they have come to understand that assessment, that scoring highly in class is what's important rather than learning. And I think the second thing has to do with their way of approaching what learning looks like. And that is that they've been taught that sort of entertainment is more important than learning, and that they're kind of afraid of being bored. And part of this is the problem is that they've also been told that employability is a crucial thing. But what that does is it causes students to evaluate everything they learn in terms of some external factor rather than the intrinsic factor of the knowledge itself. And so they look at something and think, well, I'm going to work as an accountant. I don't need to learn Shakespeare. I'm never going to use that in my job. And so they devalue their education in advance. And whilst you have that as a situation in the classroom, you can never teach students anything. So you have to think about what are the barriers to students wanting to actively engage in education and try to address those. It's a much bigger problem than simply AI. AI is a symptom of an already degraded form of education.
Okay. Well, I hope that answer your question, Pak Abdul Said. Now, the second question is from Rizky Janatu Adnin from Kendari. How can educator ensure that the integration of AI in ESP instruction for Islamic studies enhance learner academics and professional language competence without introducing bias, reducing human agency, or creating new form of dependency? Okay, time is here, Prof.
I guess I don't think that you can, right? That unless you're writing the AI yourself, then you are always going to run the risk of introducing biases. But the bigger question is why you would want to introduce it. What added value does it bring to the classroom? If you think about, where we're at right now, for at least the last 900 plus years, they managed to teach people Islamic studies without using AI at all. And, Islam as a religion has persisted and thrived without AI. So it's hard to see what advantage it brings to add AI into the mix. Why not remain with the text-based approach?
Yeah. Okay, that's the answer, Mbak Janatu Adnin. Now, the third question, perhaps the last question, yeah, from Fahriza Kirani. A few weeks ago, I read news about cases of AI misuse during examination at several universities in South Korea, with Yonsei University being one of the most notable examples. My question is, what role should the education sector play in taking appropriate measure to ensure that the potential of AI in future education can be used wisely and generate more positive impact?
So I guess that's the question that I was trying to answer, which is that first of all, we have to ask, why is AI attractive to students? Why is it attractive to classrooms? Why is it attractive to university administrators? And the answer is that it's because education itself, the idea of actually learning something, is a very low priority for most universities. For most universities, their principal priority is to provide credentials, and that's what students are there to obtain. So if all you're interested in doing is obtaining a credential, then you have no compunctions about using AI because it's just a shortcut to getting the credential. It shows that you have no interest in the transformational power of education itself. So we have to look at ways to stop the degradation of the very idea of education. We have to stop talking about things like employability and so forth and recognize that there is an intrinsic value to simply knowing things and wanting to know things, and to once again privilege the idea that knowing things is important, and that it's not simply a matter of being able to use a machine.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Ian Buchanan, for your insightful sharing about the AI with us all here in Indonesia. Now, I would like to invite the secretary of this organizing committee, Pak Abdul Sahid, to give the token of appreciation, the certificate for Prof. Ian Buchanan. Please, time is yours, Mas Sahid.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a real pleasure to present this certificate of appreciation to Professor Ian Buchanan. Professor,
Thank you very much.
your keynote was timely. It is also thought-provoking. You help us see how technology and teaching must grow together with integrity. Your clarity, your generosity, and your intellectual warmth have enriched this conference. On behalf of IARELTI, thank you, Professor, and our warmest congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you once again, Prof. Ian Buchanan, and also Pak Abdul Sahid. Now I give the time back to Master Ceremony to proceed with another agenda for today's conference.
Okay, thank you very much for Professor Ian Buchanan for the inspiring presentation. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will now have a 10-minute for break time, please feel free to stretch, refresh yourselves, and we will reconvene shortly. Thank you.
Okay, Mbak Hilda, you can help participant what to do to go into the breakout room.